Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Home and our webinar, Foolproof French Visas, Paths to Living in France. My name is Christopher Nye, and I'm Senior Editor at Overseas Home and France Property Guides. We have been helping customers relocate and buy in France for pretty much 20 years now via our online guides, hopefully inspirational newsletters and property mailers, and also by connecting you directly with trusted experts such as Allison Grant Lounes. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I should have checked that before. The creator of Franceformation and co-author of Foolproof French Visas. Where are you joining us from, Allison?
So I am based just outside of Paris.
How lovely. Well, it's great to have everybody with us today, whether you are watching live or whether you're catching up on demand. Please do throw your questions into the questions tab on the right-hand side of the screen, and they're already coming in, so that's excellent. We are focusing very much on visas and residency and all those elements of moving to France. And if you miss anything or your question doesn't get answered, please do contact Allison directly, and she will be able to help you specifically. But also, if you want to share the recording when you get it, do send it on to friends and spouses in particular who you think need to know things. So I'm going to be quiet now and let Allison give her presentation, and then we'll come back with questions in a few moments. Thank you. Over to you, Allison.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christopher, and thank you to Your Overseas Home for having me. My name is Allison Grant Lounes, so it's a little bit of a French pronunciation. I live just outside of Paris and moved here after I graduated from university, so I've been here for just under 15 years. I originally came as a student, and I enrolled in a French university independently, and kind of had to figure out how to do all of the grown-up things of living in France by myself. And so that turned into writing a blog about it for people moving here independently. And now I have been helping people move to France in various forms for about 10 years. I wrote the first edition of my book, Foolproof French Visas. It was released in 2019. I have been the admin of the Americans in France Facebook group since 2013. And that's where I give advice daily on answering a lot of the questions that people have about visas, residency, the logistics, and administrative questions about moving to France. And in 2021, after COVID, is when I created this company, Your Franceformation, and we offer comprehensive relocation packages that I will get into in a little bit. So I'm very happy to be here today with Your Overseas Home. We have a lot of clients who have purchased or are in the process of purchasing property in France. We have historically worked with a lot of Americans because until recently, our British cousins did not need visas in order to relocate to France. So the advantage that you get from working with a company run by Americans is that we have had to do this ourselves. We have been working with the American community on these same questions for quite a long time. As I said, my company was created in 2021, but I have been doing this type of work in various forms for basically the whole time that I've been in France and helping people in various ways. So I'm going to go through right now some of the things that you need to know about the visa process for moving to France, and then I'll talk a little bit about ways that you can work with us or get assistance from us if that's something that you're interested in for your move. So obviously there are lots of wonderful reasons that you might want to move to France. There's, affordable, accessible healthcare, a calmer, more balanced way of life, affordable education. Maybe you think French people are fun to date. There's the ability to travel in France and Europe, beautiful countryside, vibrant cities, learning French. French wine and cheese, and then of course just the wonderful quality of life that France has to offer. And France really is a great place to live. I absolutely love pretty much everything about living here, even if some things can be annoying and frustrating at times. So if you were thinking about moving, there are a few different things that you need to do to make it a reality. And I want to start with talking about the fact that, you kind of have to understand that you are moving to a different country with completely different rules and ways of doing things. And I want to say this in particular because, one thing that I've noticed in the difference between our American clients that we work with and our British clients or British people who are asking questions about this on various forums is that it used to be very easy for you as British citizens to move to France, and I think there's kind of still this idea for some people that it's basically like moving from London to Manchester or something, except there's a different language, and that's really not the case. And you do really have to go through a lot of these administrative procedures um, and make sure that you know and understand the rules of moving to a new country. Um, so the other main criteria for sort of figuring out how you want your move to go is one, of course, figuring out where you want to live in terms of what region. France has a lot of different beautiful regions that have English speaking American British immigrants and expats. And you don't have to own property in France. I know this is a property webinar, but there are many people who do not own property or who rent while they're waiting for their property purchase to go through. So owning a property is not a prerequisite for moving. But the main thing you're going to have to determine is your source of income or the sources of income that you're going to have while you are living in France. And that's going to be a key factor in figuring out the appropriate type of visa that you want to apply for. Once you know whether or not you're buying property and approximately when you'll have that property in hand, if you want to rent while you're waiting for the sale to complete, and once you know what visa type you want to apply for, those two things are going to give you a good idea about how to create a timeline for your move, understand the administrative step to take before you apply for your visa, and then when getting over here is actually going to be realistic. So at my company, Your Franceformation, we are relocation specialists focused on getting the right visa. And by that, we mean that we consider the visa to be sort of the cornerstone upon which your entire life in France is going to be built. And if you have that shaky foundation, if you have a visitor visa, but you're actually working, if you do not have a visa and you're just kind of playing fast and loose with the 90 out of 180 day rule, then not only could you potentially get in trouble, that's not super likely to happen, but it makes following opportunities a lot more difficult. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But having the right visa is going to determine what types of income you can earn, in what ways, and if you have a pathway to becoming a resident of France with a 10-year carte de séjour, or applying for French naturalization if that's something that interests you. And of course, once you have a 10-year card or a French passport, those open up a lot more opportunities in terms of getting different types of work. French passport, obviously, you can move anywhere in the EU. And so, as I mentioned, once you have your visa type figured out, that's going to determine, whether or not you're on a path to residency and sort of the timeline for your move. So let's dive into your different options for visas if you want to move to France. So there are 6 broad categories of visas for living here. So it's very common to get a family visa. So or to move from having EU citizenship. So if you have an EU passport through ancestry, then that's one really easy way to be able to move to France and to not have to jump through a lot of these administrative hurdles. But you do have to be clear that you are exercising your treaty rights to live in France as the citizen of another EU country. So it means that either you're able to support yourself with your financial resources, or you are working at a job or being self-employed registered in France. There are also different visa types or carte de séjour types if you are the spouse of a French citizen, if you are the spouse of an EU citizen, or if you have a French citizen child. So there are a couple of different options there. Note that there are options to get a family visa if you are paxed or have a civil partnership, with a French person. However, it's quite complicated, and usually it requires living in France for a certain amount of time before you gain the right to having that private and family life visa type. The most common type that, or one of the most common types that we deal with are retirement visas, and that might be perhaps the most interesting category for the people attending here today. If you are moving to France, you have passive income from pensions and investments and possibly rental income, but you no longer work in a business, you no longer have a job, you are living off of your assets. In that case, you can apply for a visitor visa. We're not going to get into the third category or the fourth category today, which is studies or temporary work programs for young people. I think those are not going to apply to many people here. Although you can get a student visa at any age, you do have to make sure that you have a path to transition out of a student visa to something else if your goal is to stay long-term in France. And that usually involves finding work after you complete your studies and doing studies that then will lead to a job. Temporary work programs are mostly for people under 30 or 35, depending on the type. There's also the intercompany transfer, whereas if you have a contract for a foreign company outside of France that is paying your social charges in that foreign country, they can send you to France for up to 3 years on a temporary contract. The thing that you have to know about that is that you absolutely have no way of extending that visa at the end of those 3 years. You absolutely have to return to your home country. So it's not ideal if you want to actually make a life in France. 5 and 6 are the ones that are going to interest a lot of people as well. There are many different kinds of work visas, which is you have a job and you are being sponsored by that company to work at that particular job. So a lot of times people will write to me and ask like, oh, I want to go to France and with a work visa so that I can work. Okay, great. But you need the job first. You need the contract first, and the contract has to meet certain criteria and salary requirements in order to be able to sponsor you legitimately for that visa type. I'm not going to get into all the different salaried work visa types during the time we have today because there are too many nuances, but they are covered in Foolproof French Visas, and basically it depends on your salary, it depends on your education, and it depends on how much of a need there is for that type of professional in France. Self-employment is the category of visas that we work on the most. It is people who are either going to be self-employed, working as freelancers, sole proprietors, they're working under their own name, they're invoicing as individuals, and the visa type for that would be called profession libérale. And then there's also a couple of options for people who actually want to set up a company, a French entity, where they can invoice clients. There's no income cap. They're paying themselves a salary from their company, and they get there's the potential to get a multi-year carte de séjour right off the bat. So that could be an attractive option for some people. All right, all 28 possibilities are covered in my book, Foolproof French Visas, which is available on Amazon. It's available on all the Amazons. I think it's £25 on UK Amazon. And we'll be giving you the link to purchase the ebook edition as well in one of the emails that we send out. So it's a good place to start if you want to understand the nuances of the different visa types. So the golden rule that I want to cover is if you are working and you are in France, you are working in France. Your earned income, so your salary income, your business income, your self-employment income, any income that comes from activities that you are generating with the purpose of earning money is going to be subject to income tax and social charges in France. And it's going to be subject to French employment or business law and all laws, really. So if you have a carte de séjour, a titre de séjour, a long stay visa, that is going to make you a French tax resident. And not only does it enable you to take advantage of the many benefits of living in France, like the healthcare system and like the wine, it also creates obligations for you. So the expectation when you have a visa or a titre de séjour is that you are spending usually about 9 months out of the year, at least, living in France, that France is your primary residence. It is the center of your financial interests and your home and where you live on a regular basis. And all of those things are going to make you a tax resident, which means France gets to tax your income. So there's no, I'm working remotely for a UK company. They're paying me into my UK bank account, and I'm pretending that I don't live in France and I'm not paying French tax on it. I'm paying UK tax. That is not a thing that is okay. And really, from my perspective, if you are living in France and you're connected to the internet in France, and if you go to the doctor, it's the French doctor, like, you should be paying into that system. I want to talk about a couple of the basic questions that sort of apply to all visa types. Um, one of the most common questions I get is for the financial requirements. So if you are applying for a visitor visa and you are not working at all, then the consulate is going to be looking to see if you have net SMIC. SMIC is the salaire minimal de croissance, and it is French minimum wage. So net French minimum wage, it goes up with inflation. It is currently 1,366 euros approximately per month. So if you have that amount net in the bank, that can cover 1 to 2 people. Usually they want to see either cash in the bank, or they want to see recurring income in pensions or, passive income. And that would be for somebody who's not working. Now, if you are working, if you're self-employed, for example, they want you to be earning at least gross minimum wage, which is just under 1,800 euros. So if you're self-employed, you earn 1,800 euros a month. That is going to satisfy the financial requirements for a self-employed person. If you have a salary and are being sponsored by a job, then there are several different levels of visas depending on the salary and your education. So I'm not going to get into all of that today. I'm almost out of time for giving the actual presentation, but all of those details are outlined in the book. Gîtes is a common question as well, a visa for owning gîtes. So the key number you want to know here is 23,000 euros. If your gîte earns less than 23,000 euros, it is something called LMNP, location meublée non professionnelle, non-professional furnished rental, and that is going to be not classified as a business. If you are over 23,000 euros in income per year, you will have to declare that as a business, and that implies having a visa that enables you to run the gîtes as a business. And if you add other activities to the business, like you have table d'hôte, you have, people renting bikes, other services and things that you offer, then it moves that into a business as well. Working remotely, any option for working remotely requires being registered in France in the proper way to pay social and income tax. You cannot register as self-employed without having a visa to be self-employed. You cannot register a company without having a visa that enables you to register a company. You can't get a job or, be the employee of a foreign company that is paying you on a French contract unless you have a visa that enables you to do so. So there are a couple different options for working remotely. Again, they're outlined in Foolproof French Visas, depending on whether or not you have the right to work in France without a particular type of visa. People often ask me about getting a multi-year carte de séjour. This is typically for people who have some type of work or family connection to France and are signing up contrat d'intégration républicaine, which means that you're going through a procedure with OFI about integrating into French society. You're taking language classes, and that is available to people who are on salaried visas and who are starting businesses or who come as with family members. It's not typically available to people who are only on visitor visas. Finally, for coordinating a move with a property purchase, you do not have to own property before arriving in France. We sometimes advise clients, if they're not sure exactly where they want to live, if they have a property in mind but want to stay in the area, or they think the sale is going to take a long time but they want to arrive more quickly, you can absolutely come to France with 30 days booked in an Airbnb, find a longer term lease for the area where you want to live, stay there for a couple months, work on purchasing the property, And then once the sale goes through, move into your new property. That's not a problem. You don't have to own property first. I just want to end briefly before we get to your questions on what we do at Your Franceformation. We have comprehensive relocation packages. It depends a little bit on the visa type, but we work typically with people who are coming with their families, who are retiring, or who are self-employed or starting a business. So those are the main categories, although we do help others as well. Our visa packages typically include visa applications for all family members. We have tons of video resources, not just on the work that we do for you, but also on different aspects of moving, such as bringing your pets, enrolling your children in school, finding a doctor, getting on the French healthcare system, getting different types of insurance, things like that. And so we really try to provide comprehensive resources and make sure that, you understand that you're fulfilling, you're really setting up your life here and you're doing all of the admin that you need to do. Our packages themselves typically include not only the visas, but getting you set up on the French healthcare system, registering your business if you're going to be self-employed or owning a company, doing a driver's license exchange, and then making sure you know what you need to do when you renew your visa. We really want to provide comprehensive resources, not only to make your move a success, but also to make sure that you understand what's going on, you learn the vocabulary, you learn the language of the French admin, you know what to do to keep your life in France sort of moving along, and you're not in the dark about what's being done for you. I've talked to some people occasionally, they've been living here in France for years. Sometimes they've had a company or a person helping them, and they actually can't describe the work that's been done on their behalf. And I find that really sad. I don't want you to be dependent on me and my colleagues. I want you to be sort of going towards creating this independent life for yourself where, you are mastering and really integrating into French society. How you can learn more and work with us, I'm going to be sending a follow-up email sequence to those of you who are in attendance, which is going to sort of introduce you to me, my team, the work that we do, the many free resources that we offer, and some of the paid resources as well, if you do want to go further and learn how to work with us. I host a free Q&A every month that's an hour long, where people can show up and ask questions. If you're 3 years out from your move, great. If you want to move next month, show up. There's no obligation to be a client or anything like that to get a little bit of free advice. I do recommend reading Foolproof French Visas so you can learn about the visa types. You can also schedule an individual paid consultation with me to go over all of your questions. And if you do want to proceed with working with us, we have the relocation packages on our website, and you can request a proposal and have a chat with me about them. So I went a little bit over time. I hope you have a lot of questions, and now I'm going to leave it to Christopher.
We do indeed have a massive questions. We won't get to them all, but as you explained, they will get contact details and they can come to you directly. However, we will. I'm just going to plow on. I'm going to just go through. You covered so much, and we're not going to cover everything, but I'm just going to plow in with some of these questions. So the first one we had was from Janet. As a UK retiree, can I earn a living from writing novels?
So it depends a little bit.
Assuming you can. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
So that is a great complex question to start with, because writing is one of those things where it really depends where you were when you were doing the writing, how are you getting paid for the writing, and a bunch of different things. So if you wrote the novels while you were in the UK and you are continuing to receive royalties from a major publishing house, then you are a visitor. That is considered passive income. You do report it in France on your taxes. You will probably be taxed on it in France rather than in the UK. But the question of how royalties get taxed is a little complicated, and I'm not an accountant. So I'm going to leave that there. If you are continuing to write novels now while you are in France and publishing them on Amazon, or any way that you are self-publishing them and you are the one generating the income, then you are a freelance writer running a freelance writing business. And then in that case, it would be a self-employment visa that would be more appropriate. So it depends a little bit on the scope of the writing activity.
Okay. But just to be clear, if you're spending less than 90 days in France at a time, or in the Schengen area, you are not living in France. You're just on holiday in France, so you can essentially do what you like there.
If you're on
Would that be
vacation,
right?
and if you go on a writing retreat for 89 days in France, like, then yeah, that's fine. Then you don't have any
Well,
French tax issues.
Well, when we ask people on our surveys if they're buying a holiday home, and the ones who said yes, we asked how long they were going to be there. A lot of them are spending a lot of time there, like 100 days a year. So I guess for those people doing a little bit of work in their holiday home, that doesn't count as requiring a visa. But what happens then if they decide that they do want to live in France for full time? Then they have to go for that visa anyway. So perhaps they might as well have done it in the first place.
Yeah. So if people are spending, let's say, you're maintaining the 90 out of 180 day rule, and you're working from your holiday home in France and working remotely, nobody's really going to notice or care at that point.
Okay.
If you are living in France and you have a visa or a titre de séjour or whatever, as a French tax resident, having a visa or a titre de séjour makes you a French tax resident. And that means that you are liable to declare your worldwide income and all of your bank accounts in France. So if you are working and you're not supposed to be, somebody at some point is probably going to figure that out, because they're going to be figuring out like how many, and there is a new tax form for property owners where you have to say on the form how many days of the year you spend in France. So, have people historically gotten away with that kind of thing? Yes. Do I think it is smart in an age where it is so easy for the administration to gather so much information on us, and to cross-check it with the bank, and to cross-check it with the prefecture, and to cross-check it with the local tax office? I don't think it's smart to do that. And you know what? Like I said, if you're living in France and you really want to be here, you should be paying into the system.
Absolutely.
So in that case, there are a couple different options, and it sort of depends. The best way to set yourself up kind of depends on if you have an EU passport, or if you're the spouse of a French citizen or whatever, and you don't need the visa to give you the work rights. Then you have about 6 different options for how to best manage working remotely in France. If you need to apply for the visa that enables you to work while you're in France, you have fewer options, because you need to make sure that the company isn't necessarily going to be able to sponsor you to work in France.
Okay. I'm going to plow through the questions. Natalie says, we have a house in France. I appreciate that you'll have covered some of these things, but Natalie says, we have a house in France. Does this make a difference for obtaining a visa?
What it does is it means that you can put the house's address on your visa application. So it makes it really easy for the visa application, and then for when you arrive, being able to do all of your admin to get set up like really fast. In terms of reducing the financial requirement, it doesn't really. It reduces the financial requirement a little bit, but it's
okay. And there's no golden visa like you have in Spain and Portugal. Wait, no. Okay. What is there an investment visa that we, if we got loads and loads of money, or we just sold our house in North London, is there an amount of money that would make a difference? An investment visa, for example.
There's a visa called Passeport Talent Investisseur, so it would investor visa. That is if you are investing at least 300,000 euros in a French company and you're going to own at least 30% of the shares. Honestly, I've never done.
But that's something
I've never done one of those. I would say I would not feel comfortable doing one of those. I think that's a case where you really need an immigration attorney. So yeah, it's covered in Foolproof French Visas, but I don't know of anyone who's done one either. It's not common.
Okay. Adrian lived and worked in France 20 years ago, and he wants to go back. Will his previous work or residence be in his favor when he applies?
You do have to list previous times that you've lived in France on your visa application. If you are entitled to a French pension, then there's actually a visa type called retirement. So visitor is if you're retired from another country and you have the financial resources, yourself, then you can get a visitor visa. If you have previously worked in France and are entitled to a French pension, you can get a visa called retirement or retraité, and that's going to entitle you to live in France. Whether or not it enables you to work, I don't think so. So if you want to work in France again, you would have to start over with one of these visa types.
Okay. Here's a good one. This is from Lydia. I am well, I suppose the more relevant thing is I'm an Irish citizen who can go and live there and retire there. However, she has a 24-year-old adult son who is not a full-time student or a high earner. What would be a visa path for him?
He's not an Irish citizen, I suppose.
He's not.
Unfortunately, your status as an Irish citizen doesn't do anything for him, so he would have to qualify for a visa type on his own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, if one's parent was born in Ireland, one is Irish, whether you want to be or not. So you can. So if Lydia, your parent was born in Ireland, then your son can probably apply for a passport. Something to look into. We're well over time, but let's just keep on going for another 5 minutes because we've got so many interesting questions. Okay, we've discussed. We have discussed. You have mentioned JEETs, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just for people who didn't get it the first time. Can self-employment include running a JEET or an Airbnb?
Yes. You're going to have to be really careful because so many towns and cities in France are putting in restrictions on Airbnbs. So, do your research. Do your research before you purchase a property, especially if it's in a super touristy area. Typically, the rule of thumb for a JEET is 23,000 euros or under. You can do it on a visitor visa. The super rural JEETs where you might not even get up to that amount, you don't have to, you can just do that on a visitor visa. You don't have to apply for any kind of business visa. However, if you're going over 23,000 euros, if you want to add other business activities or other services as part of the JEET rental, then you're going to apply for a self-employment visa, which is going to be the profession libérale visa type. And we've had several clients who have done that. And it's fairly straightforward.
Okay. Matthew is asking, what are the typical costs for the visa application?
So for the visa application itself, you have a fee of about 32 euros or so for the visa appointment. That's per person. Even children who do not have to attend the appointment need an appointment. The visa application fee itself is 99 euros per person. Once you arrive in France and you validate your visa, the fee is either 200 or 225 euros, depending on whether it's a visa to validate online or whether it's an actual carte de séjour that you're going to be picking up. So overall, the fees for getting the visa and the titre de séjour are not that high. I know in the US and the UK, immigration fees to the government are quite expensive, and there's no, they're not anywhere near. They're not anywhere near. I know people who have immigrated to the UK and who've paid like their whole NHS fee for like a year or 2 years or whatever. And that's not what we're talking about here. It is very affordable. If you are talking about our fees to do these service packages, typically we're working with people 2 to 3 months in advance of their move, all the way up to 6 months in advance of their move, and about 6 months after they arrive. For couples for a retirement visa, we're charging about 4,500 euros. For business creators, we're charging 6,000 to 8,000, depending on the complexity of of the business. So it's fairly affordable overall, you know, in terms of fees. And you don't have to really get anything translated either. They will take documents in English. Oh, Christopher and I has lost internet connection.
Okay,
There he
that's
is.
good.
He's back.
Well, okay, we've got another 100 questions or so, but we're not going to get them all answered. So I do apologize if you haven't had your question answered. But you know, just contact Allison directly. I'm going to take the hint and finish it there. We're 5 minutes over. So thank you very much, Allison. Do go to Your Overseas Homes website, where we will no doubt be doing much more with Allison, more Q&As and everything. Do please leave us a Trustpilot review. I think you can see that if you found this useful. And don't forget, we've got our virtual event, an all-day event where you can get absolutely everything, every question answered. That's coming up on the 11th of November. So thank you to Allison in particular, who's been so knowledgeable. Thank you to you for all your intelligent questions, and good luck on your move to France. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Christopher. And I look forward to hearing from all of you very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.